Have you ever thought about how we get wise? I mean, is it all about packing more and more knowledge into our brains? Or is it about clearing everything out? Well, there's this incredible story from the 13th century poet Rumi that dives right into that question. It's a parable about a competition between two groups of artists, and it reveals two totally different paths to finding truth. So let's just put the central question right out there. Do you find wisdom by adding more layers of paint to the canvas of your mind? Learning more, studying more, gathering more facts? Or do you find it by polishing away all your assumptions and biases until your mind becomes like a perfect, clean mirror? It's a real question, right? Do you read another book, or do you just sit and try to quiet all the noise for a minute? This story puts those two ideas head to head.
Okay, so our story kicks off, as so many great stories do, in a king's court. And this king has a bit of a challenge on his hands.
Picture this. You've got two groups of the best painters around, the Chinese and the Romans, and they're in front of the king, basically arguing about who's the best. Each group is completely sure that their art, their skill, is the absolute pinnacle of creation.
So you have these two camps, both claiming to be number one. On one side, you have the Chinese painters, famous for their incredible detail and artistry. And on the other, the Romans, who are just as confident in their own abilities. The king, seeing that they're at a stalemate, decides there's only one way to settle this: a competition.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the king's contest sets the stage for two completely opposite ways of thinking about art, and, as we'll see, about wisdom itself. Their methods could not be more different.
So, the Chinese painters get to work pretty much how you'd expect. They ask the king for everything they can think of. 100 different colors, all sorts of fancy materials. Their whole approach is about adding stuff to the wall, building this incredibly complex, beautiful image from scratch. But the Romans, they had a totally different idea. When the king asks them what they need, their answer is just profound. They say, neither paint nor hue will suit our work, except to remove the rust too. Their entire philosophy wasn't about adding anything, it was about taking away, about purification. And get this, to crank up the drama, a huge, heavy curtain is hung right down the middle of the room, separating the two walls, so neither side has any idea what the other is up to. The whole thing is shrouded in mystery. So after days and days of this secret, intense work, the moment of truth finally arrives. It is time for the big reveal. First up, the Chinese painters. The king walks into their side of the room and he is just blown away. I mean, the painting is an absolute masterpiece. It's so rich and vibrant and detailed that it feels like it's pulling you into another reality. The king is amazed. It's a total success. And then it's the Romans' turn. They don't make a big fuss. There's no fanfare. They just lead the king over to their side. And with one simple move, they pull back that heavy curtain. And what the king sees just leaves him completely stunned. The Romans hadn't painted a thing, not a single drop of paint. Instead, they had spent all their time polishing their wall until it was a flawless, perfect mirror. And in that mirror, the Chinese masterpiece was reflected. But somehow, the reflection was even more brilliant, more alive, more dazzling than the real thing. The king just stood there, totally bewildered. Okay, so what in the world is really going on here, right? This is obviously not just a fun little story about an art competition. It's a deep, powerful metaphor for the spiritual journey. So let's unpack it. This whole story is Rumi's way of explaining the path of the Sufi mystics. The Romans, with their focus on cleaning and polishing, they are the Sufis. Their belief is that real wisdom isn't something you find out there in books or lectures. It's something you uncover inside yourself by clearing out all the junk. So let's break this down. The Chinese painters, they represent the path of external knowledge, the scholars, the academics, the people who learn by reading and studying. The Romans, they represent the mystics, the ones who look inward. Their polished wall, that's the cleansed heart, the pure soul. And that stunning reflection, that is the pure essence of truth itself, seen clearly without any distortion. And this idea of a heart like a mirror is just so powerful. What does it mean? Well, according to Rumi, it means getting rid of all that rust. The jealousy, the anger, the grudges. It's about becoming so open, so capacious, that you can reflect everything the world throws at you, the good and the bad, without judging it and without being stained by it.
And that leads us to the final, and maybe the deepest, point of this whole parable. It's about learning to see past the surface of things to get to what's really real.
So, what the story is really telling us is that while external knowledge, that beautiful, complex painting, is great, it's still just the outer shell. The real prize, the true essence of reality, is found when you go beyond it. By polishing that inner mirror, you can reflect the truth of the universe directly.
It really all boils down to this one single, powerful line from Rumi's poem, All Colors Eventually Lead to Colorlessness. It's this idea that all the complex things we see and think about are just temporary expressions of one single, pure, formless truth.
And Rumi gives us this beautiful way to picture it. Think of the colors as all the complicated forms we see in the world, like that painting. The clouds are the things that carry those colors. But both the colors and the clouds are just borrowing their beauty from the real source, the pure, colorless moonlight of ultimate reality.
And that brings the whole thing right back home, doesn't it? To us. In our own lives, are we focused on adding more detail to the painting, more facts, more opinions, more layers of complexity? Or are we trying to polish the mirror? Are we trying to clear our minds so we can see the world and ourselves with a little more clarity? You know, in a world that is constantly screaming for us to consume more, maybe the most radical thing we can do is just polish the mirror.